quite windy. Yeah, but really nice. Lovely, actually. Charming and all that. I was thinking evolution is the story. Keep trying to emphasize that, to atheists. You kind of have to explain to them, that evolution isn't a good story. That it's, there's just this mechanism of this replicating molecule using us as demonstration models, essentially. And the game is pretty much, become the mega parasite. Learn how to acquire mechanical skills in the art of thieving, stealing energy, so you can make more copies of your DNA and to take over the world, quote unquote. Obviously that gets modified with complexity. So here the Earth is very old in its maturation of its infestation. Its infection has become, not atrophied, but it's a kind of atrophy that happens with time. When things acclimate to a circumstance, the rough edges are all knocked off, and it becomes a smoother grind. I'm not arguing that this evolution problem gets better with age. I'm just arguing that it grinds differently. So now organisms are, they have built into them certain experiential knowledge, just built into their structure, that certain things don't work. That if your head's too heavy, your neck will break. Those kind of rules that are figured out over time. That's why we're a certain size. It's because there's an optimum size. Too big, you'll break your neck. Too small, you get your neck broken by something. That kind of thing. So you have to be, everything sort of has to hit some point that is decided by all the other competitors. The other competitors kind of decide for you what tools will be advantageous to have. And but the game is still this grind of catch the energy and make matter out of it. That's essentially the function. Probably make matter is the wrong way to say it, but obviously combine matter. You need energy to force matter into configuration or relationship. So you need to steal energy, acquire it, to push pieces of matter together and arrange them in a certain order. And that's what we are. We're an arrangement dictated by a billions of year old process that is quite nuanced, incredibly has a lot of steps. It's a lot of steps to your creation, chemical steps, zillion steps, a lot of steps, just to create the infant form of yourself, the starting point. So yeah, that's the grinding. So it's now developed into a game where it's one of the things learned, like having too heavy a skeleton or having this or having that, is one of the things that is learned that evolution kind of forces the gladiators to conform to, a rule, is that you can't make too many of yourself. You have to make just the right amount. So if you make too many, you'll make yourselves all vulnerable because you will end up killing each other to acquire the limited resources, and you'll create the problems of hoarding and the problems of famine. Too little resource and it becomes excessive monetarily. The resource becomes very expensive because there's too many hands reaching for it, kind of argument. And you just end up soiling also your environment. So your waste products end up polluting your world and cause you potential damage. It helps some of your competitors who eat your waste products, and that is also a threat as you make potential enemies stronger. So yeah, there's this idea, people call this a balance. Well, it's an arbitrary balance. We call it balance because yes, the thing has to oblige. It has to acquiesce to these rules to function. But it's hardly a balance in some sense of creating the quietness or the peacefulness of a symmetry. There's great loss in this balance. And again, understand that the entire cost of this thing is in most cases, in most of the biological world, everything living in that stream biologically doesn't produce 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 children. It produces many thousands or hundreds of thousands of copies, and only one will be the duplicate to take its place in the environment. Obviously, for the successful, that number will be 7 or 10 or 12, and for every one of those successful organisms, there'll be many who never reach their first birthday, so to speak. And that's the process. And so it's all about just acquiring these tools. And some of these tools are tools you can easily understand, eyes and ears and smell and sound, and they're all kind of radars of different kinds. You can understand those. But some of the tools are cellular tools, tools built into the structure that aren't obvious. One of the tools built into our blueprint is our mortality. We don't die because the world beats us down. We don't die necessarily through other organisms eating us. If we lived in the real nature, that's probably how we would die, violently, struggling with some other organism for our life, whether it would be a member of our own tribe fighting for hierarchy, or a predatory animal attempting to steal our energy to make a copy of itself. But yes, we would die through environmental attrition rather than natural attrition. But clearly there were organisms in our past that didn't have predator issues, didn't have a problem living a very long time and dominating the environment. And they still had to be killed just because of the very idea of replication requires it. On an island planet, the past must die for the future to live. And you can't be a replicating molecule unless you do something to dispose of the previous model, put simply. So we have built into us a mechanism that will kill us if the environment doesn't do it first. My body will take care of business and put me out of business. And so that's a hidden, a subtle, a very real tool for survival is death. As much as that sounds non-intuitive, it's a necessary part of the game, especially if you intend to do any evolving or enhancing of this DNA code. So that's just one of the subtleties. The other subtleties get into the why dragonflies can produce millions of offspring, and they could take over our poundage for pound. And there were times on Earth when the insect life was maybe a million times thicker than it is now, maybe. Just covered in them. Just the air thick with them. Because there was so much available energy, and not so much of the energy was trapped in these more complex organisms. So there's a different kind of strategy, and they all can work. Earthworms haven't changed in hundreds of millions of years. Tons of varieties, but the basic package hasn't changed, because it doesn't need to, because it's perfectly suited to exploit the environment it's exploiting. It would be perfectly unsuited to exploit the environment we exploit, especially on days like this. But for the world it exists in, it doesn't need to know mathematics or have a complex brain, because the organisms it has to compete with are dumb, dumber than it, essentially. The little microbes and the rest of it are easy to deal with, and by the earthworm's size, it can sort of own the environment. Now there are intruders that go in there, moles and different other mammals and things, frogs and whatnot, and they'll take their share, but they don't take enough of a share to be able to overwhelm or deny the earthworm its niche. And clearly that's another environmental liability. It's another one of these control mechanisms, is the control mechanism not to eradicate your prodigy's food supply. You don't want to eat them all and then give your children a desert to live in. That doesn't work over time. So that's another tool hidden inside of us. Are mechanisms that tend to keep us from soiling the environment in catastrophic ways. Clearly those tools are not perceptual. They're somehow mechanical in birth rates or birth defects, or in maybe the impulse to, like a lemming, an impulse to run to a new environment, to get away, to not like your family and run away, something like that. Go west, young man kind of impulses. So there's likely subtle psychological impulses that kick in when certain pressures are created, that are a manifestation of this need, not to rape your environment out of functionality, not to consume it with success. So little mechanisms built in, that one I was reaching for another point on that whole angle. This subtlety. It's just so subtle, the difference. In terms of the ambitions and the balances with you and your the world, you have to, like I said, to succeed, you have to provide a better world for your young. It's like when the salmon swim upstream, and all die. Part of the mechanism of their death is the fact that their decomposed bodies, the little bits of tissue, will wander down the stream, and as the eggs hatch, they will feed on the nutrient, the actual physical bodies of their parents. These are subtle mechanisms, subtle tools that are responsible for the success of organisms. So the success of salmons was likely this idea, that it would be best if you just drop dead. Okay, at the moment of egg laying, as soon as without there's no need to nurture your young or protect your young. Better to just feed them with your corpse. Yeah. So I mean, this is the process. I'm saying this is not a Gaia. This is not a a Mother Nature. It is a insidiously cruel. It's a malignant process. I mean, it is like a cancer, and it's controlled by worse cancers, worse kinds of plagues. That's another thing to bring up, is the Black Plague and these other almost extinction events. These two are part of the process, part of the design, to keep populations under control. Part of more of the success of being vulnerable, to destruction, destruction is the wrong word, to being whipped or beaten into submission of the rules. Only just the right amount of success is allowed. So anyway, I believe that's enough. Could go on and on about evolution, but I mean, atheists really got to understand what evolution is, what it means for us to be byproduct organisms like that, to be designed to just be another parasite.